I've invited John in, so hopefully that'll work. And John, you'll be able to click the join button. Here he comes. He's coming in live now. John, can you hear me, mate?
I sure can, Joe. There I am.
G'day, mate. I don't know what happened with our first live there, but I was giving everyone an update. I was telling everyone about your YouTube videos. I was showing it. Maybe Instagram weren't happy with me sharing those videos of yours, but I was just trying to update my audience just about what sort of a legend you are in this space. And it's also the first time you and I have ever talked, which is...
Yeah, it is. I'm glad. You know, first, Joe, I want to thank you for coming out with that movie, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, like a long time ago, because I mean, as I sell juicers for a living, that documentary helped me sell more juicers and be able to make a living and do what I'm doing. So thank you so much. Like, my hat's off to you, man. That's an amazing documentary.
Thank you, John. Look, I tell you what, mate, you're not the first person in the juicing industry to tell me that.
I'm sure not.
Maybe a little bit later in our live, I can share a funny story about that. We won't go into that right now, but it's just about how many doors I knocked on to talk about juicer sales before the movie came out. But we'll get to that a bit later. So John, absolute, mate, first of all, hats off for everything you do to inspire and educate the world regarding the growing of plants, regarding the nurturing of plants, the eating of plants, which ones to eat, how to eat them, how to grow. And then also, of course, there's no question in my mind, you are the world authority on juices and blenders and how they work and which ones people should buy depending on what their budget is and how much money they want to part with. So, mate, hats off to you for an absolute legend of what, you've been doing this 30 years now, mate? Are we up to 30?
Not quite, 27. So I'm getting there.
Give or take, mate. I'm within a 10% range, so that'll do me. We'll run with 27. So I was just giving I think the three areas that I want to make sure that my audience understands about you is that you have been eating a raw fruit and vegetable diet for 99.999% of the time since 1995. 1995, guys. That's like 10 years before YouTube. I mean, that's 10 years before YouTube even. The boys put that first video up at the zoo. That's 12 years before an iPhone. That's like the internet was only 3 years old back then, if you can think about that. So that's how long John's been on that journey. So we're going to hear about that, and I want to get that story and understand how that came about and why and how that's been going. And then, of course, you've got the discount juices business, and that's how, as we heard, you fund your life. And I don't know how many millions of views have been seen on YouTube with your stuff, but it's got to be over 150 million views all up, I would say. I'm probably underselling you. And then you've got the growingyourown.greens.com and doing gardens and showing how you can grow in a very small space an abundance of food, right? So there's a lot to unpack here, and we don't have 24 hours, because even then we wouldn't have enough time with you, John. So, mate, I think that the people listening today, I think what we've got to do is inspire them, mate. And so let's stick to the stuff that's inspiring. Let's stick to your philosophy. And we can do more lives in the future to maybe drill down on some of that if we need to. But I want to also leave a chance for the audience to ask some questions as well at the end. But to kick it off, John, let's just get into the reason why, what was going on, and how did you come about, and how has that decision 27 years ago, how have you been able to maintain that, mate?
Sure, Joe. So first I want to do a little correction. So up until maybe like a couple of years ago, I was 99% raw for all these years. That being said, more recently, as I've shown on some of my videos, I've included small amounts of heat processed plant foods done in certain ways. So I'm not going out and eating any old vegan garbage. There's a lot of vegan processed food out there. You know, I will heat process foods in specific ways for very specific reasons for better health, in my personal opinion. I mean, a lot of raw foodists may say raw is best and you're degrading foods when you're heat processing it. And, you know, some of the science that I've seen proves otherwise. That being said, I will also say, you know, I use the best juicers on the planet to extract nutrients from the juice. But in addition, I also use the best cookers to cook my food to lose a minimal amount of nutrients, right? So it's very important. You know, you used a high-speed Breville juicer in your original documentary, and you still got results, right? But as you know now, like the Namo running at a slow speed gets so much more nutrition in your juice than one of those high-speed juicers. And by all means, I hope that people may use high-speed juicers instead of drinking soda and other things that are worse off for them. So I just want to clarify. I've been mostly all raw, but I don't want to claim something that I'm not. Just like to be, just tell like it is.
Appreciate that's good to get that correction in. We want to keep it real and honest and true. So how did it start, John, for you? What was your life like before, and how sick did you get? Like, obviously there's the illness, but what was it, and how did it affect your life?
Sure. So that's why I got into this whole dietary stuff. And if I didn't get sick, right, and I wasn't going to die, I mean, I wasn't fat though. So then I wouldn't have gotten into this. So actually, you know, the thing that I want to say the most for me is that I am most glad, one of the things I'm most glad about in my life is that I did get sick and almost die. That's the best thing to happen. Because why? Because now I'm in a place where I know, you know, somewhat why that happened, and more importantly, how to reverse that so that I don't get sick again. More importantly, learn the ways that I could live healthier without, you know, worrying about disease and getting the same affliction again. But more importantly, also learning the life skills that I needed to learn, and also be able to be in a position to share those with other people to help people change their lives for the better. Because, you know, we are not taught about how to grow fruits and vegetables, or how to juice them, or how to even cook them in the best way possible to minimize the nutrient loss and minimize the carcinogen creation and toxins when people are heat processing their food. And so that's what really got me started. I had what's called spinal meningitis. I was hospitalized, and the doctors told me that I might not make it out alive because they did not have a treatment for me, because it was the viral version from my recollection.
And how so old were you, John? Well, what was your age?
I was in my early 20s when all that happened. Yeah, so I was in my early 20s when all that happened. Just out of college.
What was your lifestyle like? What was you? How were you? Just standard American diet? Where were you living? What was going on around you?
Yeah, so luckily I was living in Sonoma County, California, so like the wine country. So it's a relatively, you know, health conscious area. I grew up in California from parents that would shop at a co-op back in the day. You know, it's like a natural food store. We wouldn't get sugary cereals. My mom would not allow soda in the house. We would barely get any kind of cookies or anything like that. You know, I remember as a child, I got to snack on, like, my favorite treat was like dried apricots without the sulfur that were hard and chewy. And like, I love dried apricots. Nowadays, I think they're like one of the grossest things, because there's better ways to preserve apricots, like by freeze drying them, which is insane. But even that could get dangerous. But yeah, so I led a relatively healthy life, although, you know, I still ate meat. And, you know, we ate a lot of processed foods when I was a kid. I mean, we'd go to McDonald's like as a special treat every once in a while, but it's not like we ate that every day. My mom and my parents and even me, I'd have to learn how to make home cooked meals, you know, but it still had far too much processed, you know, cooked animal foods and other, you know, pasta and things. And it just did not and was not vegetable centric or vegetable rich. And we ate some fruits, but just not enough fruits either. And this is probably like most Americans. So I ate on the healthier range of standard American, but I still ate some of the standard American things. Now, when I moved away to college, then I was in control of what I was eating pretty much all the way. And as a college student, you know, I got to say I was eating a lot of top ramen. I had stopped eating red meat, you know, so I ate only chicken and fish. but I read my ingredient labels to make sure I didn't get things with like, big words that I couldn't understand. My mom didn't allow us to have hot dogs when I was a kid because of the sodium nitrate in there, which is like, they said it caused cancer and all this stuff. So, I could have been in better eating wise, like, when I was a child, absolutely, but I was better off than most Americans. But the thing that I think really got me was a few things. I think the genetics was really bad because I was not breastfed, and I believe that is likely caused some of my health opportunities, I'll say, right. Because maybe not the best microbiome. In addition, it ran in the family, things like asthma, allergies, eczema. So I had these as a child growing up, even before I started eating crappy, right? Right. A lot of ear infections as a child, and they gave me lots of antibiotics, which probably wiped out my microbiome. Yeah. So I was kind of like maybe not given the best hand at life. Yeah. I mean, I'll say that, I guess, but then so now I've had to really kind of go the other way to figure out why did all this happen. And it's like, if you got genes load the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So maybe I didn't have the best of genes. And then especially with not eating even the best way possible, then it pulled the trigger and I was going to lose my life, So I had to really, even though I got some genes maybe aren't as good as the next guy, I got to really ramp up and dial in my diet to, what makes each part of my diet better as best as I could to live.
Was there someone who told you this, or was this something that came from within, this change back then?
Yeah, I wish somebody said, do this, John, but no, I mean, everything happened one bit at a time. So the thing was, I got out of the hospital only, I could say, through higher powers because the doctors had no treatment for me. And I mean, the basic thing is our body heals itself. And yes, doctors can assist with the healing process and sometimes they hinder it, but we won't go there. But what I will say is I got out of the hospital and I asked the doctor a question, doctor, why did I get sick in the first place? I had spinal meningitis. That's usually a very contagious disease. And that, the health department had to come out and interview me and ask me who I was around. And then they had to make sure other people didn't have that, because I was hanging out with, my fraternity brothers at the time. And so but I got it. I'm like, why did I get it? And nobody else did. He's like, because you have a compromised immune system. So you have a weak immune system based on his testing. And then he's like, I'm like, well, what could I do so I don't get this again? And he said, well, I could give you like a shot, immunization or vaccination against it, but it only protects you from one kind of meningitis. And I'm like, well, you couldn't fix me before, or, guarantee I was going to walk out of here when I almost lost my life. So I'm not really into that shot. And then that just stuck in my mind, like, John, you need to figure out how to build your immune system among anything else in life, because I learned at a young age, even if I had $1 million, which I was nowhere near having, just out of college, I was actually in debt, I couldn't have said, Mr. Doctor, here's $1 million, not valid unless John is alive and walks out of here, and millionaires, billionaires die every day because they may be specializing in creating lots of money and physical wealth and money, which is not your health, which is your biggest wealth, in my opinion. Now, I encourage you guys out there to, maybe you might have to sacrifice a bit less to have your health, because so many people work at a job they don't like, extra hours, waking up before, when they don't want to, and if they hit their alarm clock, but their body really needs more rest to be optimally healthy. So, I mean, that really stuck in my mind that, like, I need to build my immune system because health is my greatest wealth. After almost losing my life, I'm appreciating it a lot more. And that's just set me on this whole trajectory. And nobody told me, like, do raw foods. Like, it happened all in stages. And I think I leave it up to, like, nature, God, whomever's controlling everything. It just, my eyes were open at different times. So the first step was actually thanks to Jay Kordich, the juice man, another juice guy, right? Oh, yeah. I like to think I'm following in Jay's footsteps to a small extent, but, he's changed millions of lives around the globe, including mine. And I saw his infomercial on TV back in the 90s, dates me a little bit, but basically he said juicing would build your immune system. And I'm like, I need the juicer. I need to build my immune system. I didn't know what else to do. I was a kid out of college that just went to school for business marketing. I didn't, major in health or nothing like that. So I ordered his juicer, and he gave cassette tapes with his juicer. And on the first cassette tape, there's something I'll never forget. he says the thing that prematurely ages you faster than anything else is cooked foods. Don't put cooked foods in your body. Now, when I heard that for the first time in my life, I'm like, this guy's a nut job. He's a whack job. Everybody I know eats cooked foods. I'm not going to listen to that stuff, but I'll listen to his juice stuff. And he's like, juice, carrot, celery, and, you know, parsley and all these things. And I'm like, okay, that's legit, but I'm not going to listen to this cooked. That's weird. But actually, that planted a seed in my mind, because then later, after I was juicing, and then I was it's a really good plan. I still recommend it to this day. I stopped eating breakfast. I started juicing for breakfast. I had like a small lunch. And then in the afternoon, I'd have another juice, and then I'd have my dinner. This way, I'm already eating like half of my food is like raw because I'm drinking fresh juices. That's concentrating the volume of fruits and vegetables, especially the vegetables, guys. You know, I could get into me. And so that led me to doing, you know, and then I think I cut out, at that point, I started cutting out like the chicken and the fish. I also went on to this.
Is this something that's happening over months, weeks, years? Like, what's this progression sort of happening over? What's the time frame?
So this progression happened all when I started juicing within 6 months.
Right.
Once I started juicing, I started making some pretty radical changes. So I started juicing, and then I picked up a book called Arise and Shine, or Cleanse and Purify Thyself by Dr. Richard Anderson. He talks about colon cleansing and how death begins in the colon, and all your problems are the colon being dirty and all that stuff. So I did like the Rise and Shine cleanse, which is psyllium, bentonite, and herbs and water. Although in the book they say you can drink as much juice as you wanted, but I missed that part. So I did this major cleanse, and basically for the first time in my life, my skin cleared up, and I'd never been able to clear my skin up from the dry skin condition that I had as a child.
Eczema, right?
The eczema, and even the doctors told me, like, you know, you might outgrow this when you're a teenager, and, you know, teenager came and I didn't outgrow it. He gave me all these hydrocortisone, you know, things to put on. It kind of like maybe made the itch go away, but like I still had it. But after I did this cleanse, my skin 100% cleared up for the first time in my life. And I remember crying in the shower, because I don't know if I was crying because I was overjoyed that my skin was totally cleared up, and this is something I've never seen before, or I was scared shitless, sorry about the language, because I have to like eat this raw food stuff, because in that book he said if you're going to cleanse and clear yourself out and purify thyself, then you shouldn't go back to cooked foods, which toxifies you back again, and then you have all your problems again.
Yeah.
So that led me on to like being like, okay, I'm going to be this raw food thing, and then I had to like, you know, one step after another led me to raw foods, and then I just like basically just I went into it cold turkey in 1995, because I'm like, this is how I need to live if I want to live. Because if I don't, if I eat the crappy stuff, my dry skin will come back, I have a weak immune system, and I might not be here.
It's kind of really crazy to think that this was in the 90s, when there wasn't so much shared. There was no social media. There was no support online. Yeah, there were websites, there were pages back then. There was, as you said, the cassette tape. I mean, it's really like today, a lot of people know about these types of raw vegan, 100% raw juicing. It's you know, it's a tip of your fingers. But so John, let's fast forward a little bit to this idea of how did you turn this choice into a lifestyle, which is your business, which is like your lifestyle and your work. I'm assuming your whole income is based on your content. Am I right? You don't go to a job and be a mechanic around the corner or anything. This is your life, and your life has become, I mean, there's not much differentiation between work and life for you, I gather. Yeah.
So, I mean, on some levels, it wasn't necessarily planned this way, but then it kind of happened this way. But it kind of did. I don't know. So like,
not being planned, I can assure you.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, here's the thing. I started selling juicers online only because I was in the market for buying a juicer, and there was no good resources to get a juicer at a cheaper price than at regular places. So luckily, you know, in the city I was living at the time, there was one of the major big juicer distributors in California living one city away. So like, I'm like, hey, I could buy stuff from them and then resell it online for a little bit more money. And that was back in 1998, I started that business. And I only did that because I was developing websites at the time. which I thought I was what I was going to do. But then I'm like, well, I have a lot of free time because I wasn't getting a lot of jobs. So I'm like, let's just sell juicers on the side to make a little bit extra cash. Because I could just, as an order comes in, I drive to the next city, buy the juicer, and then ship it out to them. It's like, all right. And I just did that kind of on the side. And like, meanwhile, my web development business kind of like tanked, and the juicers just kind of took off. And then that was even way before YouTube happened, and then I've just been living my life. Like, I've learned about gardening and the importance of growing your own food and high quality food, because you can't trust, the industry to add the trace minerals to make the plants more disease resistant, to make us more disease resistant, to have the minerals and more phytochemicals and phytonutrients and whatnot. And then I've like really tried to optimize like the different juice extractors that I'm testing and using to know which ones are going to make the most and get the most nutrients out of the produce that I'm juicing, because I'm not going to waste my time using an inferior juicer that doesn't put all the nutrients in there and it's going out with a pulp, So it's like all these little things kind of built up over time, and it just kind of all happened that like I get to, if I kind of like more than just me creating a life, is that I'm just sharing my life and what I do and what I'm passionate about with others, because I teach people how to grow food, which I'm more passionate about people teaching people how to grow food than actually getting them to juice. Because if you grow your own plant foods, then you're going to eat more plant foods. And my whole message to everybody out there watching today is to eat more fruits and vegetables however you can, whether you got to eat them whole, chew them really well, whether you got to vacuum blend them, or whether you got to juice them in a NEMA juicer, and you can save 10% off using my coupon code DJ55.
Yeah. Let's put your code out there. What's your code?
DJ55. It'll save you $55 off my favorite juicer, the NEMA J2, the one that I use the most. And today, Joe, I made 9 quarts of green juice in the NEMA juicer, and actually I'm also drinking a root juice made in the NEMA juicer.
What green juice did you make today? What's the recipe you used today?
Yeah, I don't even know. So let me go ahead and stop the camera. So the recipe today was let's see, 9 romaine hearts, 2 green cabbages, 1 head of celery, 2 cucumbers, and then a big bunch of dinosaur kale. I just picked it out of my garden. So, I mean, it's like, it was a huge bunch of dinosaur kale. And then it must be about like at least 36 ashitaba stems, which is like celery, but ashitaba is like celery to the next level. It's like from like Japan. It's an Angelica family plant. Lots of, benefits to that in proven scientific studies. You can't buy that unless you grow it yourself fresh. You could buy a powder. And then I juice some of the ashitaba leaves in there also. So it's just straight greens, no fruits, nothing else. But then I drink my root juice. It has like, multicolored carrots, beets, jicama, red cabbage. So, cabbage, guys, don't underestimate the cabbage. It's anti-cancer. The red version has anthocyanins in it. This also has some ginger and turmeric from Hawaii, actually white turmeric. So white turmeric doesn't stain your juicer like the regular turmeric. That's another tip. And then this also has probably some apples and some lemon in there also. But if you guys follow me on Instagram at Growing Your Greens, I often post the juices I'm making and the recipes that I'm making for you guys to know, what I'm making these days.
Yeah, so anyone wants to follow John who's not following, you just go up the top, you click up there, and you can see it has both our handles, and you can just follow John there. And make sure you do, because as I've said to you, and hopefully maybe some of you have joined today and they've never heard of John before, but he has got the YouTube pages up. Let's go through those again, John, so everybody knows what they are. You've got the YouTube page, Discount Juicers, correct?
Yep, over 600 videos on Discount Juicers, Joe, comparing all the major brand juicers. And as much as I use the NEMA the most, I'm not going to tell everybody should get a NEMA. I will say that depending on your needs, the NEMA might be the right one for you. And for my needs, it is the right one for me because I've used all the juicers. But on that channel, I compare all the juicers so that which one might be the right one for you, because I sell and represent all the major brands in the U.S. that allow me to sell them and represent them. And I test all the major brand juicers in the U.S. so that I know the truth and I can pick the one that's to me the best for my needs. Yeah. And then share with you guys. And then also, of course, Growing Your Greens. I teach people how to garden and grow their own food. I have over 1,600 videos on gardening to teach you guys from basic steps on how to build a raised bed out of wood to fill it up with the best soil to like advanced topics where I visit worm farms and show how they make the best worm castings. If you want to do it yourself, you want to follow and model what they're doing. I'm really into gardening, and actually my latest video on growing your greens is a garden tour, so you can see what I'm growing in June in my garden. And outside, right outside here, it's over 100 degrees. So like, you know, you guys don't have no excuse. If I could grow in over 100-degree weather here in Las Vegas, Nevada, you guys could grow anywhere. And when I lived in Northern California, it was a lot easier to grow stuff. So,
yeah. So what state are you living in now?
I'm in Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, you're there, right? So you've actually, it's 100 degrees. So those watching here, understanding Celsius, that's like in the high 30s of Celsius. People that are metric watching this live. And what about OKRAW? You spend, and that's your third. That's the third sort of leg to your wheel, right?
My third YouTube channel is called OKRAW, and actually where I share my personal, you know, diet and lifestyle tips and interviews regarding diet and lifestyle, you know, for others focused around getting people to eat more fruits and vegetables. Actually, the video coming up later today that I'll be posting, hopefully if I have time, is on, you know, why I believe everybody in the world should be juicing, actually, honestly. I mean, I think that most people would agree that vegetables are something really healthy to eat, no matter what kind of diet, whether you're on a keto diet, maybe carnivores might not think vegetables are healthy, but basically every other diet in the world aside from carnivore diet believe people need to eat more vegetables, and juicing to me is the #1 way to increase your vegetable consumption, especially if you don't like doing it, and to extract the most nutrition out of your vegetables.
Yeah, you're speaking my language, John. I've been, you know, it certainly saved my existence. In fact, you know, one thing you said earlier, which is that you're really glad you got sick because that puts you on this trajectory and this path. In the beginning of Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, I think I'm sort of on day 44 or something. I know it's Thanksgiving Day. I'm in Oklahoma, and I'm just sitting on a countryside. And, you know, when we edited the movie, I go out into a field and just sit down and say, you know, at this moment, it dawns on me that I'm actually quite glad that I got sick, because if I didn't, then I wouldn't be on the path that I was on at that time back in 2007. So I'm going back to 2007 Thanksgiving Day. So what are we? That's this year it'll be 15 years ago that that I was sitting there. So we're not far off that. And I didn't know, obviously, when I'm shooting that scene, Daniel, my cameraman, he's there, and the boys have got the audio set up. And back in those days, you're carrying these huge, big cameras around, you know. Nowadays, you can shoot it on your iPhone. But we're out there, and Serge, the audio guy, and I just sat down and nearly started to cry, John, talking about how I was really glad that I got sick. It was the first time in my life, after being ill for 8 years, that I actually embraced the illness and sort of said, hey, because if I didn't, maybe I would have got a heart attack. Maybe I would have gone down this trip. Maybe the cancer, whatever would have got me, you know, because I wouldn't have had this sort of that change. Now, I didn't know that was going to be the opening of the movie. That ended up being the opening because in the edit, we thought, let's drag people in because people have got to give a shit. Otherwise, they're not going to watch some crazy Australian guy juice across the country. And then, of course, Phil came along, and that wasn't even in the script. So we had to throw out the first movie and redo the whole bloody thing. But that's for another time. But I was going to tell you the reason why that Breville juicer ended up in Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead. Because I actually, where I am in New York right now, I'm in Soho in New York. And to actually get the juicer that I was going to use, I needed it like to buy it the night or two before we started the movie. And I just went into Crate and Barrel around the corner, and I bought that because it's an Australian brand, and I've been Australian. That was the only one that I knew of. I didn't know about these other US brands. So it was just quite fortuitous for Breville, at least, that's how it happened. But now, you know, the way that the movie was embraced by people, the way that it helped people like you and others with their business of the sales, and now for the full circle, the whole 180 to come around, where now NAMA are on the scene. And, you know, look, the fact that someone like John Kohler is giving the green light thumbs up to the NAMA J2 and to the NAMA business. And, you know, look, you make a lot of money out of a lot of juices. So as you said earlier, and there are certain people with that price range, it's not going to work for them. And I think that's fantastic. I talk about that a lot when I'm on my tours, and I can't wait to get back out amongst the people. But, you know, when I was doing that before this world went into the shutdown, getting out and about, and people come on and say, Joe, I've got this machine, but it was the cheapest one. It's the one that's like $70 or $80, John. You'd know it's the cheapest juicer on the market from Amazon. And they would come up to me and say, I've got this. And I say, mate, it's fine. That's great. Because you know what? As you said earlier, that's better than going down and having Coca-Cola and lemonade and doing that. Get that, just use that machine. And so I think what's interesting is that I wish that I'd known about you back in 2007, or 2006. But in another way, I'm glad I didn't, because if I had, then I wouldn't have made a film. I wouldn't have gone on this journey. I wouldn't have done that, and we wouldn't be talking today. So it is what it is. Listen, what about, we've only got 5 or 6 minutes left, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, John, but I know that there's so many people. Let's see if there's any questions. If anyone would like to ask any questions now of John. I'm going to just throw out a question, John, to you. If you had to sort of say the top 3 reasons that you think that juicing, and I'm not talking about juice fasting, I'm just talking about bringing juice into your day on a consistent basis. What would be the top 3 reasons that you would say that people, and if it was 4, that's fine, but just give me your top 3 why people should bring juicing into their life on a daily basis.
I mean, number 1 reason is to ditch other foods that are worse. And I mean, I know everybody watching this got to be eating something in their lives that is not as healthy as fresh vegetable or leafy green, or even fruit juice for that matter, right? So that's number 1, right? If you can change out, you know, get rid of brownies or, you know, ding dongs or ho-hos or Reese's Pieces or even a coffee, then I would even venture to say like an almond milk, you know, is not as healthy as a you know, purple juice that I'm drinking. Although, you know, almond milk's still better than cow milk, but you know, it'll move you in a better direction to eat more vegetables, and vegetables have been associated with better health outcomes, you know, straight up. That's number 1. Number 2 is you will be able to increase the quantity of vegetables and fruits you're eating. Like, you know, this morning I drank 48 ounces because I drank my normal 32 plus another 16 because I had an extra 16 when I made all my green juice. I've already eaten like 6 pounds of greens today. I mean, that's well over my recommended daily allowance. And, you know, I'm good with that because greens are so important. Now, if I don't even eat a salad today, which I will because I have it pre-made, I'm totally good on my greens and I could go out and eat other things for enjoyment, for pleasure. Not that I'm going to recommend you guys like, I had my green juice and I'm going to eat crap. I'm going to go McDonald's. But hey, at least getting a green juice in and then go McDonald's is way better than just going to McDonald's twice. So. Now, the next thing, this is something that most people don't know about, and actually it's because I filmed a video on it yesterday. I still have my documentation. But, you know, I look up the published science. So, like, unlike a lot of people that teach about health, I look up a lot of the science online. And, like, to make the video yesterday, I looked up, like, and read, like, 24 different journal published studies. And I'm like, which ones would be the best to share with people? Because I don't want to share 24 of them. Each one had their things that might be good. But this was the most important one. And the title is called Associations of Soluble Fiber, Whole Fruits, Vegetables, and Juice with Plasma Beta-Carotene Concentrations in a Free-Living Population of Breast Cancer Survivors. So, I mean, to sum this up, because I won't read the whole thing, conclusion, soluble fiber may inhibit beta-carotene absorption. Therefore, consumption of juice may increase plasma beta-carotene concentrations more than whole fruits and vegetables in free-living populations. Now, I'll summarize that in layman's terms. What does that mean? That means that if you're eating whole carrots, your beta-carotene levels in your bloodstream are not going to be as high because the fiber and the nutrients are locked in the fiber. That's what the juicer, the NAMA juicer, will do. It'll basically blow open the cell walls, let some of the nutrients out with the soluble fiber, you know, that's in the juice, that now you'll get a greater uptake of certain nutrients. I'm not going to say that's going to happen with everything, And of course, by all means, we need to eat these vegetables too for their insoluble fiber that you don't get with your juice, and break it up. That's why I encourage, once again, vacuum blending, juicing, and eating whole and chewing really well. But juicing has a big place because I know a lot of whole food people. Whole foods is great, but when we process food, whether it's a juicer or whether you're cooking it, you are losing something. You are changing and modifying it.
Yeah, one of the things I used to do, John, at when I go on events, is I would get a whole bunch of celery sticks up and I would chop them up into like 1-inch pieces. I get like 10 people from the audience to come up with their 1 inch. So they've got 10 inches between 10 people, right? So 1 inch each. And I would say, all right, I've got my 10 inches over here. I might put 20 inches or 30 inches of celery. They would start chewing them. I'd put mine through the juicer and I would drink 30 inches of celery before they finish masticating or chewing 1 inch of celery. And it was the demonstration of exactly what you just said, how you can supercharge your micronutrient. It's almost like you're outsourcing the masticating to the machine and the digestive process. You're outsourcing that to the juicer. I love that. Take any supplements with your lifestyle. Do you need any supplements? Is there any doctors that say, hey, John, you've got to take this in because of the way you're living?
So in Vegas right now in the summertime, I get plenty of vitamin D because most of the day I don't have a shirt on. I'm outside with a hat on to protect my face, but I want to get a lot of sun to make vitamin D. I currently do take a B12 supplement, which I would say is wise for people that are either plant-based or not, because a B12 is, it's a cleanliness issue. It's a bacterial and cleanliness issue. And I don't just think it's an animal versus non-animal, because there's, once again, published studies showing that even meat eaters may not have enough B12. So other than those supplements that I think are required, I take some other probiotics and some enzymes, but I don't think, normal people need to take those. I take a few other random herbs that I think are helpful for my, specific, what I'm going through in my personal life journey.
What sources do you use to get your omega-3, says Live Well New Zealand?
That's a good question, actually. That's the other thing that I might recommend for people to take is a preformed DHA and EPA from algae-based. I use a company in the U.S. called IWI for their algae DHA EPA. I also eat plenty of flax seeds. And I'm really a big stickler on omega-3 and 6 balance. That's very important. I am concerned that as somebody that eats a plant-based diet over time, if you don't have enough preformed DHA and EPA, then you may have some cognitive issues or opportunities when you're older, and I don't want to have those kinds of opportunities. So I do take preformed sometimes, but basically you're not going to find pretty much not a day in my life goes by that I'm not eating some flax powder in, even a dressing or something that I'm eating. So I encourage the use of flax powder. And then more importantly, aside from the omega-3s, I discourage the inclusion of high omega-6 foods, which would include processed foods, which is something I don't eat myself. A lot of different oils, and also keeping your nuts under control and not eating like tons of nuts and seeds, because if you just start eating seeds that aren't flax seeds or chia or hemp, you could really whack out your omega-3 to 6 balance. I have whole videos on this where I interview doctors about the topic if you're interested on my YouTube channel, OKRAW.
Fantastic, John. Last question. Someone asked, what flowers can you eat that's not cannabis?
So actually on my Growing Your Greens channel, I have a video where I grew like over a dozen different edible flowers. So, you would be amazed that most vegetable flowers are edible. So right now in my garden, I have like celery flowers. You could eat lettuce flowers. I have chicory or dandelion flowers. Lettuce flowers are edible. Cucumber flowers are edible. You could eat, some of them don't taste too good. You could also eat fruit flowers. So my favorite fruit flowers are called actually fajoas. I know they have those in Australia and New Zealand down there. Those flower petals of fajoas taste like the fruit themselves. Of course, I like the nasturtiums. I'm growing those in my garden. Marigolds, the pansies and violas are my favorite flowers by far. Of course, you could eat calendulas as well. There's like So many different flowers. Roses are edible technically if they're not grown for, you know, for looks, because they can be highly sprayed and pesticide ridden. Carnations. I mean, there's so many cool edible sour grass. You know, there's so many. Oh, my favorite edible flower of all time, artichokes, man. People don't understand artichokes are quite underrated. Like flower, they're like the highest in antioxidants of pretty much any vegetable, even after being cooked and put in a can or like a glass jar. They taste amazing, and they're full of inulin, which is going to feed your microbiome. So I mean, and one thing I want to do is I want to juice artichokes.
I love my artichokes. So there's a last question, because every time you answer, there's more coming in. All right. Question. I know what I do. Do you, with your juicing, when you do store your juice, I guess it's a question, do you store, or do you just like having yours as soon as you make it? Or do you actually like to store juice? And if you store it, how long do you store it for?
That's a loaded question when you're asking me, Joe. So, all right, so this is the process. So here's the thing. Optimally, I would love to make my juice and drink it fresh every single time and clean the juicer. That being said, I live a very busy life, 3 YouTube channels, trying to do everything I need to do, clean my house, do my gardening, prep all my food, and I can't make it every single time. That being said, like this morning, I made 9 quarts, 1.5 quarts got drinking instantly right after I was done. And actually, I was a bad boy today because the juicer still ain't clean because I have so many other things to do today. I should have cleaned it right after. I did a faux pas. Anyways, so I drink 1 fresh usually when I make a juice, and then I store the rest. And I just put out a video. You guys want to watch that? How to store your juice up to 7 days. And it's not just because I use the Nama. That's one of the tricks that I use. But another big trick is using these lids. These lids are vacuum lids.
Yeah.
And these lids, if you get the right pump, you can pull up to a little bit over 20 inches of mercury, and literally you will de-aerate the juice. Nobody talks about this online except for me, because these are things that I've experimented, learned, even looked up in studies where they do this de-aeration process for wines and beers because they don't want it to oxidize and store longer. I show you guys how you guys can do that with your juices. So look up my video on discount juicers, how to store juices up to 7 days. So I'll store my juices up to 7 days if done properly, and you do all my steps. It's not just like using the vacuum. There's a lot of other things that you guys want to do, including using a slow juicer.
I encourage people to get over there and check out that video and more from John. As you can see, this is our first conversation. It will not be our last. I've got to thank the guys at NAMA for putting us together. John's code again for anyone out there, $55 off. And the code for you, John, is?
DJ55. Use it at namawell.com for 10% off your J2, or even the new, I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about it, the 5800.
We're not supposed to talk about it.
Well, I didn't. I said 5800, so that's the current model.
That's it, mate. You're allowed to do that. All right, I asked the question. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening with NAMA, and John and I are actually lucky enough to get some updates before they go live, but we're not allowed to we're not allowed to talk about that. But I can tell you now, a lot of the design people at NAMA are watching you right now about those lids. So that's probably something exciting as well to look forward to. John, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day there in Las Vegas. What have you got? Is it 2:55 there for you, still the afternoon?
Yeah, it's about 2:55. Yeah, I still got to clean my juicer, do my gardening. I got a lot of other things.
I was going to say, mate, you got to get in that kitchen and clean up the juicer. And we all know, by the way, that with the NAMA J2 and 5800, it's actually not that big a deal to clean. It's actually, out of all the juicers I've used, it's one of the easiest to clean. So there's a last little minute plug. John, thanks, mate. Appreciate it very much. You guys get out there and follow John out there on all of the channels. When I post this, when this live ends, I'll put it up, and I'll have the NAMA team will come in underneath in comments, or the Reboot with Joe team will come in and tag everywhere that you can go and find John. So, mate, once again, brother, thanks very much. And I look forward, next time I'm out in Vegas, I'm going to come and look you up and check out that garden of yours.
All right, sounds good, Joe. It's good talking to you, and I'm going to interview you one of these days. I got a bunch of questions I want to ask you, too.
I'm ready, brother. I'm ready.
All right, good deal.
Okay, thanks, mate. Good on you.
Bye-bye.